That's okay. No problem. Call this meeting back to order, or call this meeting to order, which is now the Committee of the Whole. And if anybody has a declaration of pecuniary interest, they can bring it up now or later on. First off is a delegation by Amanda Healy, who's our Health and Safety Manager at the Grey County, and it's on Corporate Wellness Program. And Amanda has a presentation, slide presentation, which will be available after this meeting on the web, on our internet portal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Welcome,
Warden.
Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is my first time at the podium, so I apologize if my formalities are a little off. Randy gave a good example, but I'll try my best. So as the warden mentioned, I am the health and safety manager with the county. So my job is to work with staff from frontline to senior management to make sure that we're meeting compliance initiatives, but also that we're having some strategies in place so that we can meet our needs for our staff's health and safety. We've been pretty good in the past as far as addressing resources for safety procedures and initiatives. We've maybe been lagging a little bit on the health side of the job. So you guys are all here to represent your public's interest and make sure that we're being accountable in how we spend our public tax dollars. So I'm going to be presenting the corporate wellness program that's been developed by staff, supported by senior management, and rolled into the 2019 budget, and giving you some confidence in the fact that it is a strategic business decision and not a frivolous staff perk. So in doing that, we'll start just by our goal. So our goal here is to show you guys how we can help reduce costs, improve productivity, and ultimately offer better service to the public by investing in wellness. Things like mental health, physical health, nutrition, and work-life balance. So we're trying to move from a treatment-centric model of the reactive base and move towards a more prevention or proactive base. So that kind of how it tied into the Board of Health minutes there, we need to start on the education and the prevention side because the other model isn't sustainable anymore. So how we got here, just a little bit of a background for you guys, is that we started having some staff suggestions and recommendations in the realm of wellness, both from a perspective of health and as a perspective of morale for staff. This slide could be called skepticism to support. When we first took it to senior management, you guys might be in the same boat right now, where there was a thought of, does wellness really work, or is it just a fad? So from that meeting, we actually got support from our senior management team to gather a group of staff together to do some brainstorming on what could corporate wellness look like at Grey County, and also to survey our own staff to see, is this something staff are looking for and are interested in participating in? We had record engagement when it came to that survey with staff. I remember our communications manager messaging me saying, oh my God, we got 80 responses in the first day just from one of our locations. So staff were engaged, they were supportive of it, and we used those survey results to get together with that brainstorming group again and build the business case of what would it look like at Grey County, how does it make sense, not just for staff, but also for the public taxpayers as well. So we took that business case to SMT at the end of February this year, and it was a resounding 180, and we got support for the corporate wellness program, which we're building into the 2019 budget. So to give you guys an idea of what this would look like, we did develop a purpose, mission, and vision for the corporate wellness program. This is to ensure that even though different departments and different staff have different needs, so some of our staff are shift workers, some are not, some are desk workers, some are pretty physical labor. We want a consistent approach across the corporation, and we want something that we can talk about as something to market as an employer of choice and talk about at our corporate orientation. So the purpose is to improve the overall health of our organization and the well-being of our employees in order to create a healthier, more engaged, and more productive workforce that can better serve our communities. The mission is to provide staff with education, resources, support, and inspiration to empower them to reach their optimal level of total health and wellness. And our vision or goal is to create a corporate culture that recognizes that employees perform their best when they're healthy, and as such, we actively support and participate in employee well-being initiatives to help our greatest asset, our employees. So recognizing that last point is really important, is that what we do here and how well we do it really comes down to the employees that we hire. And if they're functioning at their best, we can perform at our best. So looking at the prevention model looks at things like education and awareness, screening and early identification so people can be aware of things that they might have to change earlier on, and then supplying the resources and support in order for them to make those changes. Can everybody hear me okay? Good.
Yes, fine.
So our framework really falls into 4 pillars in our corporate wellness program: mental health, physical health, nutrition, and work-life balance. Those are things that the committees that we'll be developing can focus on to have initiatives throughout the year. There's a few boxes along the bottom there. Those were things that came out of our brainstorm that might not be things that our committees can necessarily run events on, but will be things that we have to look at from a policy perspective with our senior staff and council of what do our policies on work-life balance look like when we think about things like technology and hours and things like that. Our workplace environment and design, do staff have the ability to go outside on their breaks or have a quiet space and that sort of thing. And career growth was an interesting one that we didn't necessarily expect to see out of a wellness umbrella, but that staff were really passionate about having the opportunity to reach their full potential, and really ties into our succession management strategies as well. So is it really needed, and if so, why? This isn't necessarily something that's just affecting Grey County. It's affecting Canada as a whole. It's affecting our local municipalities, and we'll show you about the impact of that. So Canada essentially is experiencing a health crisis. We have lots of chronic disease, and it's impacting our economy and our workplaces. So it is impacting us with a $190 billion cost. And the interesting piece about that is that $68 billion is due to treatment. The other $122 billion is actually about lost productivity when you think about things like sick days and sick leave and things like that. Or people just coming to work and being present but not really present. So presenteeism. So Public Health Agency of Canada reports that 70% of an organization's benefit costs come from 6 disease categories, those being cardiovascular, musculoskeletal, respiratory, digestive, cancer, and stress. And a lot of those things can be modified or prevented through behavioral changes. So we're no exception. We decided to look at our own benefit usage, and about 65% of our healthcare claims are prescription drugs. We're not any different than other organizations. That's pretty typical right now as far as the complement to drugs. But it's really interesting looking at our top 5 uses, and 3 of our top 5 are things that we think our initiatives in wellness could help prevent or lessen the need for. So our number 1 is central nervous system agents, treating things like anxiety, depression, pain, muscle tension, and sleep. Number 3 being hormones and synthetic substitutes, controlling blood sugar levels for diabetics and anti-diabetic agents. And cardiovascular is our number 4, treating things like high blood pressure, hypertension, and chest pain. So the idea here is that if we can provide staff with the education and the tools in order to make some changes, maybe we could lessen that impact and cost to the corporation. Sun Life paid out about $360,000 in those claims in the 2016 to 2017 policy year. That's not us paying that out, but it does affect our premiums. So investing in things like mental health strategies, physical health strategies, and nutrition education can help us reduce that. How we got here, so Sun Life's been doing a lot of research on this as well, because even benefit providers are seeing that this is no longer sustainable. We have to look at the prevention side, not the treatment side. So unhealthy behaviors turn into health risks, turn into chronic disease, and turn into healthcare costs. They found that 63% of Canadians have 3 or more unhealthy behaviors. So they were looking at things like, do you get your daily water intake, your fruits and vegetables? Do you get your 30 minutes of physical activity every day? Are you smoke-free or are you smoking, and do you get the sleep that you need? And they found out of those 6 things, at least 63% of Canadians were missing at least 3 of those. So they're not hitting those healthy behaviors that we're after. They also found that 1/4 of adults are obese. 4 out of 5 do not get the recommended amount of daily physical activity. 3 out of 5 aren't getting the fruits and vegetables, and 1/4 are reporting high levels of life stress. And we can anticipate from that, drawing and extrapolating to our staff, that we would have similar effects to our own staff. So when we look at our local stats, it's even a bit more alarming with public health stats looking. When it comes to smoking, Grey Bruce is 3% higher than the provincial average. We are 6% higher than the overweight and obesity average, and we are almost 12% higher than the provincial average when it comes to drinking in excess. Some people tend to hang their hat on that too. From a wellness perspective, it's not ideal. So we need to look at that and recognize that our behaviors do lead to these chronic diseases that are not just taxing our own benefits, but also taxing the healthcare system as a whole. So how we got here, people are stretched thin. I'm sure you guys as counselors, you're stretched thin a lot. You guys often have your own jobs, you're doing your own municipalities, and then you're here at county council as well. So you can relate to this, and you can hear from our conversations earlier in this meeting about the rising cost in housing. There's also been rising costs in education, and that often necessitates that more than one person from the home has to be in the workplace. That's not the traditional model, and we used to rely on the person who is at home to do a lot of the other things that support a family and a healthy environment. So we have two people in the workplace. Our work itself has changed. We have more people doing sedentary jobs. We've got technology that's blurring the lines between what's work and what's at home, and you're always able to be contacted, which I'm sure this group can relate to. And a lot of people are in the sandwich generation where they're not just dealing with their own kids, but they're also supporting their family member, their parents as well. So all of that adding together means that people have less time to make sure that this meal that we're having tonight is well balanced and that I'm getting my 30 minutes of exercise on top of getting everybody what they need into their practices and that sort of thing. It also means that they have less time to make sure that they're relaxing and getting that rejuvenation that they need and seeing friends and family that helps them cope with their mental health. So people are stretched thin, and we're seeing the impacts of that. It's as a society and as Grey County staff as well. So essentially, we messed everything up, and we need to get back to basics. So we have made many advancements as a society, but we still have the same physiology. We still need good sleep, we still need good nutrition, we still need physical activity, and all of that helps us think better and work better. So whose responsibility is it? Traditionally, it's always been thought, you're the employee, it's your health, and it's your responsibility. The reality is that it should be a shared responsibility. So I'm going to help share why that is, on why an employer has a role in that. And the reality is that it affects us too. So poor health results in workplace losses in productivity and opportunity. So absenteeism rates, disability rates, because people are dealing with severe health issues. Increased accidents if people aren't coming to work at their best. Reduced workplace effectiveness and negative impacts on work quality and customer service. And you can see why that would be. If somebody's coming in kind of on their last battery life, they're not giving you the best that they can on a day-to-day, whether that means that they're being short with a customer, whether that means that they made a mistake in a report or some calculations, or if they're maybe not coming in as often because they're dealing with that. So it could be job stress, it could be personal stress, it could be substance abuse, it could be sleep disturbance, it could be a number of things, but those things impact our productivity and we need to make sure that we're addressing them. So it doesn't just affect that person in their personal life, it affects us at work too, because problems aren't left at home. People bring their whole selves to work, and you can't be dealing with chronic pain at home and then walk through the door of the workplace and be perfectly fine at work. As I've mentioned, our current plans are unsustainable, so with the aging workforce on top of that, we're only going to see that getting worse, and people are already stretched thin, so they have the barriers of time, and they are spending a lot of time in our workplace too, so we're uniquely positioned to be able to help them reduce those barriers and provide them some resources to help them on their way. It's also a really, really good recruitment, retention, and morale tool. So when Sun Life was doing their studies, they found that 84% of Canadians believe that their employers are responsible for supporting the physical health of their employees. And they found that 86% felt the same about their psychological health. So it's something that Canadians are looking for in employers, and you're seeing that getting stronger and stronger as the new generation comes into the workplace as well. It's no longer being thought of as a perk, it's being thought of as, this is an organization that doesn't just see me as a number, and this is somewhere that I'd rather work because they're taking those efforts. And you also see, once you start some initiatives, a really big boost in morale where you get different departments interacting with each other in an unforced environment, and you start seeing some collaboration happen because people are now starting to interact with each other, and it breeds more loyalty to the organization. So why us? Essentially because wellness is good for business. If you have somebody whose battery is more fully charged, you're going to get better productivity out of them. You're going to see the decrease in sick days and absenteeism and turnover, and you're going to see the increase in productivity levels, morale, and company image. And I think really coming back to the fact that it's important to invest in our greatest asset, our employees. We would never buy a snowplow and then not budget anything to maintain that snowplow or get them the proper gas and oil and things to make sure that they're operating sufficiently. So we need to treat that person who's operating the snowplow just as well because they're making that difference. It also aligns with our strategy. So goal number 2, supporting healthy, connected communities. We already talked a little bit about that this morning. And a lot of our staff are our own residents and part of our community, so helping lead by example there and integrating health in our policies internally. Goal number 3 of delivering excellence in governance and service. So I think I've painted the picture as to why a healthy employee is a more productive employee and how that relates. And ironically enough, in our health and safety policy, we have been saying for years that we would provide the resources to implement effective health, safety, and wellness programs, but we have not had a budget for it. So this is looking to close that gap. So cost savings and budget considerations that we can look at. The return on investment, their studies are showing that for every $1 invested in wellness, you see $3.50 returned when looking at healthcare costs alone, and $4.30 when lower absenteeism is considered. So in looking at that, we have to make sure that we understand that depends on company commitment, on participation at all levels, and on creating a corporate environment of a health culture. And that can take 2 to 3 years to develop is what the studies are finding, so you have to be a little patient in the outset and make sure that we're being really accessible to all staff and pushing forward with that importance on the health culture. From our perspective internally, $136,000 is the number you see up on the screen, and that represents the cost that it would be for each of our employees who gets paid sick days to take one of their sick days. So this doesn't include part-time staff, this doesn't include overtime or backfill numbers or anything like that. It's just all of our employees who get a sick day taking one sick day. So the intent here is not to say, let's get rid of sick days. Sick days have their purpose. Making sure that people are getting the time to be at home and rejuvenate properly so that they can get back earlier, and 2, making sure that people aren't coming into the workplace ill and spreading that illness. So the intent is not to backfire on sick days. The intent is to actually flip that number on its head. If this is the cost for everybody to take one sick day, this is also how much we could save if we got everybody to take one less sick day a year. So thinking about it from that perspective, and we're not totally aloof. We know that some people will take every day that they get. So even if we got half of our staff to take one less sick day through providing the education and tools that they need in creating those healthy behaviors, we would save $68,000 as a corporation. And even if only a seventh, we'd save $20,000 as a corporation, and we'd still have all of those benefits of the healthy workplace environment. Another budget consideration looking internally is our bridging to short-term disability. So oftentimes when somebody has to be off for a significant period of time, we're responsible to bridge them for 5 days before they're eligible for a short-term disability. So they would be using 5 sick days to bridge themselves until the short-term disability kicks in. So as an example of a full-time PSW on medical leave, those sick days would represent about $920. And then the replacement worker, who could possibly be part-time with in lieu of benefits, their replacement wages for the week would be about $1,100. So that's about $2,000 wages for 1 week of absence when we look at short-term disability, which can often still come from these unhealthy behaviors where somebody's on sick leave in the hospital or having surgery because of an unhealthy behavior, or we're seeing a really big increase in chronic stress claims and mental health pieces. So if we can provide people with the coping skills and the education, the healthy behaviors to help prevent some of those, we can have those savings as well. So in the 2019 budget, we've built in $30,000 towards corporate wellness, and that works out to a really modest number of about $34 per employee per year. So when you compare that to the cost of maintaining any other piece of equipment that we have in the county, I think that's pretty modest. That will be used to have different educational offerings to employees, to have different screening, to have resources available. A section would be carved out for some corporate initiatives, and then the rest would be disseminated to department-specific committees that would still fall under our structure, but have a little bit of flexibility because each group is a little bit different. So that pretty much culminates the presentation, but investing in corporate wellness to increase our mental health, physical health, work-life balance, and nutrition, to reduce costs, improve productivity, offer better service, and at the end of the day, be a more responsible use of our tax dollars. Any
Thank you
questions?
for that. That's well done. By the way, the graphics are great. I really appreciate the content as well. So there's a question there from Councillor Mackey first.
Thanks, Amanda. Great presentation, and I think it makes complete sense. If this was supported, you said it would be 2 or 3 years before you may see, the actual benefits. How would it be evaluated in
So-
3 years?
Through the warden, formality. So yes, that's what the studies are indicating of. It may be a bit of a lag before you see those results. So what we would like to do is kind of go back to those 6 behaviors that Sun Life was recognizing as the healthy behaviors of the water intake, the fruits and vegetables, the physical activity, tobacco use, that sort of thing. And we want to start with a baseline with our employees of doing a self-survey of how are you doing on meeting these behaviors, and then we could look back in a couple years and say, let's do the survey again and see, have we been increasing on our healthy behaviors and our ability to help staff create those healthy behaviors through our initiatives. And we did have in our survey to staff, I think one of our highest numbers was 94% of staff felt that a corporate wellness program could help them achieve those healthy behaviors.
Thanks for that. Councillor Ardell, then Councillor McQueen, and then there must be somebody else along there. Go ahead,
Thank you,
Councillor
Mr.
Ardell.
Warden. Thank you, Amanda. It's great to see you here instead of at the Blue, well, we miss you at the Blue Mountains. Stolen. Fitness. So is there a movement to maybe subsidize fitness or have memberships at, because fitness is a huge part of your well-being, definitely. I just finished my apple. But, being a fitness nut myself, previously to the knee, it's for the well-being, or having a walking club here, and on your lunch hour, go do a walking, or cycling, or anything, because, as you know, at the Blue Mountains, we had bicycles outside. People could take the bicycles as long as they follow the rules and wear a helmet, and they walk along the Georgian Trail, and that helps. Instead of sitting at your desk during your lunch and eating and working away, people need a break, and they do need to get out, and they need the physical activities, and it does reduce stress. As you can look at some of us around the table here. It's a very stressful time. So, but I think that that's a number one priority, and there is a lot of corporations that have gyms in their facilities in downtown Toronto. I know we're not that, but, even having a subsidized membership at the Y, or Stone Tree has an excellent gym that I used to use. So yeah, it's just something to think about.
Yeah, so through the warden, we do have a lot of staff who would love to have subsidized gym memberships. Are we there yet from a budget perspective? No. What we have done is we've reached out to local gyms. We had staff give suggestions as to gyms that they're attending, and we've reached out to local gyms to ask, would you provide a discount to our staff? So that's been circulated to staff. There are some gyms who don't participate in it, so I don't know if maybe down the road that is something that we could look at once we've proven that wellness has had an effect on people's behaviors. But that's kind of the interim piece that we've been doing, and through this dissemination of the budget, there's some locations will, in a sense, benefit more than others, just because we're going to be splitting it up as a percentage of how many staff you have in a department as our whole, and we felt that that was kind of the fair way to distribute it. However, some of those locations, such as transportation or paramedics, have many locations and not as many staff. So that'll be a bit of a struggle. I know that they are hoping to use some of those funds to maybe purchase some low injury equipment that could be utilized, but we'll have to see how the numbers pan out.
Thank you for that. Councillor McQueen, you had a comment?
Councillor Adele, Amanda started off in Grey Highlands before she went to the mountains, so.
Let's not all fight about me.
And I would say, Councillor Adele, if you're able to bring an apple a day for each of councillors, it will be much healthier too each time we have county council, so there you go. My point, Mr. Warden, is, yeah, apple a day. Just in a sense of I captured one of your slides here, my phone here, where smoking is higher than the provincial average, and so is drinking in excess. Going through your policy and behaviors, we know in 6 days that there's going to be a new game in town called cannabis. How are you dealing with that as far as your health and safety awareness for as employees and that through an education? Are you sort of getting ahead of that?
So through the warden, we have had management training for all of our managers about a month or two ago on awareness for supervisors. And really we're coming down to be not too much different in any way from how we deal with alcohol or any other impairment in the job. So looking at impairment as the key, not necessarily what the driver for the impairment is. So impairment could be from alcohol, it could be from marijuana, it could be from prescription drugs, it could be from somebody not getting the right amount of sleep. So we're pushing for making sure that employees are fit for duty. And that's how we're approaching it. There are some nuances with the marijuana piece because it's not as easy to regulate or to understand as far as the digestion process, because there's different strains and it affects different people differently. But there was some education on that as far as if somebody's smoking versus eating it and that sort of thing. It's certainly a topic from a staff perspective that we could look into, having something similar to what the Blue Mountains is having of weeding out the myths, if staff would like more education on what that looks like from their own health perspective. But I think given our demographics, that's probably a good idea.
Well, thank you for that, and I assumed you were ahead of it. Just, I guess, it's the awareness part from everybody, not just the user, but also the co-workers that are working with an individual. That could happen that way. I know the City of Toronto police are looking at 28 days free before they report the duty, as some of those just came out just the other day. So I think there's going to be a whole new learning curve in that aspect. Mental health. I think it's been identified that mental health is becoming more aware of everybody having a bit of a mental health. I know mental health days are certainly something that are attributed to health and wellness and betterment. Are you addressing that more in the sense of mental health?
Through the warden, yes. So we're seeing that largely as a focus that's like traditionally through the Occupational Health and Safety Act, they've only really been focusing on physical health, and that's starting to change. You can see that with the paramedics and the PTSD prevention. You can see that through WSIB with the chronic stress allowances. And what they're also seeing is the impact of your physical health on your mental health and vice versa. So addressing a more holistic approach is really important. And we've actually been starting, prior to any of this, we have been doing in-house training, and we've been pulling in from the Canadian Mental Health Association and Hope Grey Bruce to make sure that staff and managers are educated on that. But this will allow us to have more resources to invest in those opportunities and make sure that it's more broadly acceptable, because we have the challenge of so many different sites, of so many different shifts being worked, and in order to properly meet those needs, we need some resources to do that.
Thanks for that. That's great. Councillor Fosbrook, you have a comment? And then Councillor Barfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thank you, Amanda. So you're referring to this as a program. Mm-hmm. Is that going to translate into a policy, Or like where would we get more detail on the program/policy?
Okay, so through the warden, we do have our health and safety policy that is signed and committed every year, and it does have that comment of supporting the programs for inclusive of wellness. So that would be our overarching policy. Program, that is essentially, like, we've identified our strategy, purpose, mission, and vision for the program. And essentially we'll be rolling that out in different initiatives under those 4 pillars. So the mental health, the physical health, the nutrition, and the work-life balance. So that's our structure that we can work on. We have not developed a specific document apart from this that outlines all of that, but I'm sure that will be coming in the 2019 year, so that we have that framework. Because what we want is to make sure that even though we have different locations and different departments, that everybody's working from a consistent approach to make sure that we're hitting those pillars, that we're hitting the mission and the goal.
Thank you for that. And if I may, so right now the go-to document is the health and safety policy. And the program, as it's rolled out, there will be additional documented information?
Yes.
So did you receive any feedback on other existing policies with implications to staff that could contribute to stress, mental health? You know, I'm going to use that day off, watch me. I mean, there's a lot of policies.
So we have had interesting dialogue, and that's part of those 3 blocks that were at the bottom of those 4 pillars. We do need to look at our language of our policies and the work environment that we're providing right now, and that's going to involve some higher level discussions of how do we define a sick day? Is a mental health day allowed in that definition, and getting to the heart of that, and we do need to reflect and look at those things. I think the comment and the strategy of having a health lens to all policies is something that this will allow us to have a stronger push on, because we're identifying it as a strategy and as something important for staff. So looking at that and making sure that we're pulling it into and making sure that it is reflected in how we deal with all of our other HR policies is really important to tie in. So it's not there yet, but it's identified in our plan and our pillars. So 2019 will be our year where we can fully start moving ahead on the wellness program.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Barfoot,
Mr. Warden, a great initiative moving forward, Amanda, and good luck in implementation. And it's like everything else, you know, the small steps will get you there. Just a small example is at Board of Health. What we now do on our break in meeting is go for a walk around the building. And that was initiated by one of the board members, and I think it's a great thing to do. You can kick the wall, do whatever you want as you're walking around. So at least you're getting the exercise of doing that instead of just taking a break and people standing around having a conversation. This way you're walking the entire building. So yeah, as I say, just little things that will
it was well done at the Board of Health, and Councillor Barfoot, as the chair there, wanted to lead us in low-impact calisthenics, but that was a little strenuous, but walking seems to be a good compromise, and we're all embracing that. So, yes, Councillor Woodbury.
Thank you. Through the chair, I was involved with the wellness program with my former employer, and we checked a lot of studies. And one of the things that we got out of Calgary was they supplied letters to the employees about annual physicals or medicals with their doctors, and laid out certain things depending on what the job was. And what they found in Calgary was the first year, I think they got 8% compliance from the group. But once early detection started happening of different cancers and cardiovascular diseases, the numbers started drastically going up, and within a 5-year period, they had in the 90% of their employees were getting yearly medicals, and the long-term sickness dropped drastically. So there's so many things to the wellness program. I think it's great, and to include it in the budget for 2019. And there's lots of things that can be done. It's a cultural thing instead of financial. So well done, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think it's important to look after council as well, so
You may
perhaps
come to our
we'll do
events.
a walking marathons in the future. Okay, thank you, Amanda. No further questions. Thank you again, great presentation. Thank you. Okay, next is the determination of items requiring separate discussion, and the first being is the consent agenda. Put this on the floor that the following consent agenda items be received and staff be authorized to take the actions necessary to give effect to recommendations in the staff reports, and that the correspondence be supported or received for information as recommended in the consent agenda. So the first is, the only one on consent today is that the minutes of the public meeting dated September the 24th, 2018, regarding OPA 143 be adopted as presented. Put that on the floor. Councillor Hicks, Councillor Greenfield, any discussion on that? Councillor Hicks and then Councillor Fosberg.
We have one item. I don't wish for it to be pulled. My question is more procedural.
Okay.
The motion is that it be adopted. And from what I read of the content, it's really just to receive it, is it not?
I'll let the clerk comment on that as she has prepared this.
May need the Director of Planning, but I think normally we'd adopt those because they are partially our minutes. They're a joint public meeting minutes with us and the local municipalities. So where the health unit we receive for information because they're an autonomous board, these are actually part of the county minutes because it's a joint meeting.
That's verified by the Director of Planning. Okay. Councillor Fosberg.
Thank you. So I'm a little unclear. Do I need to pull it to talk about it?
If it's a procedural matter, we can deal with it. If it's more of a discussion, then it needs to be pulled.
Well, I would like to discuss it.
We will pull it and put it at the end of the agenda.
Thank you.
That being said, we move on to the next. Items for direction and discussion. That staff includes $30,000 in the 2019 budget for the procurement of video and audio recording solutions for council and committee of the whole meetings. Rob's going to speak to that. Put that on the floor. Councillor Pringle, seconder by Councillor Woodbury. Rob, please make your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden. Good morning, County Council. I'm here this morning to give you really a bit more of an update on how we've been proceeding with council recordings, how that's gone to date. As you know, we started recording our meetings back in about April, so we have 5 to 6 months of evidence to work with now. As you can remember, when we discussed this last year, we decided we wanted to start by walking before we were running, just to see how we were going to do, what interest was out there in our video recordings. Now, I'm not sure if most of you have seen one of our recordings or not, so I'll just show you a quick clip here of our, just a segment of our last meeting. So I'll play that.
Fortunately, I've lost some of my colleagues.
So this is recorded from just a standard a 1080 webcam, so it is full HD in the wall. The audio that you're hearing there, that's brought in through the council sound system. So as long as you're using the microphones, it's going to get pulled in. If you don't use the microphones, it's not going to hear anything, which affects the captioning later on. On the screen there, you can see we are able to pull in slides. It's not pulling a direct feed from the video screens that you're seeing. That is done manually, but we can make sure that that's up there for any video viewers to see what's being discussed. So procedurally, it's been working okay. It is time consuming to do it this way. Typically what happens is we record the meetings in 2 parts. After the fact, I will upload those to our YouTube channel. There's really nowhere else for us to host those. And then just for ease of use for our audience, what I do is I go in and I actually timestamp all of the individual discussions. So if you're interested in Center Point South, you can jump directly to that point in the meeting. Overall, our views, There's not a ton there, but I would say it's also not insignificant. Our most views was 500 on a video, and fewest was under 20. What stands out to me is the viewing length. The average view is only about 2 minutes on a committee of the whole. It's about 3 on county council. So what that tells me, if you have 500 people watching on average 3 minutes of a video, is that they're tuning in for a specific discussion that they want to follow along in detail. Now those numbers, they are getting skewed down a little bit. If someone clicks on the video and they decide after 10 seconds it's the wrong one, that's still counting as a view as anything else. So the watch time is probably a little bit higher than that for the people that are actually taking in the content, but then that means your viewers are likely lower than what's shown in the analytics. So looking at what other municipalities are doing, there's still very many out there that aren't recording anything at all. They're still just going with agendas and reports and minutes posted on their websites. But those that are recording are typically using a licensed service to do it, or a contracted arrangement with a local provider or a company that specializes in that sort of thing. Over the last year, I think it's something that's getting more popular because I seem to be getting contacted by a lot of vendors all of the time. Myself or Jody gets them at conferences that he goes to that take a look at what we're doing and they provide another solution. So I'm just going to show you a couple of options that would be out there if we proceeded with making improvements to our videos. This first one, this is called Sleek. This is City of Windsor. What you'll notice is they're just doing a single camera view, which is doable for them just the way that their horseshoe's set up. It's pretty hard for us to achieve. It's a simple player that's actually just extended through their website. The neat thing with these licensed services is that they have a lot of agenda integration. So with Sleek, you can open the agenda on the side here, and again, it's built right in. You can jump into exactly what part you like. One of the features with Sleek as well is that it actually can code by people, which adds an additional level of transparency. So if you wanted to see everything that this Councillor Ed talked about, you can actually jump to all of his comments on specific presentations or delegations and agenda topics. So that's Sleek. And then just another quick example. This is one that some of you will be a little bit more familiar with. It's Civic Web. Some of you are using that already in versions. Civic Web is a whole suite of agenda management software, and it has different modules you can get, video recording being one of them. This is Prince Edward County, who, by the way, got the website address thecounty.ca, which I think is not right, but anyways. It's a whole dashboard. As you can see, when you go to it, you can just see the agenda, or you can switch over to the video, which is what we're talking about here. And they have some feedback. Again, single camera view for them. So it's linked right along on the sides. Other features, you can make notes if you want to, if it loads here, to the meetings as you go. There's the notes. And this is probably the most popular one out there. It was really designed with government in mind, so it has a lot of the features that would be useful for people following agendas. One thing I forgot to quickly show you in the Sleek one is they have this neat share function in here where you can actually segment clips of recordings right in here really easily. You can drag it and extend it, and you can share that directly. Like if someone from the public wanted to capture a clip from a meeting and share it with someone, just like that, in like 2 minutes they can find it and share it. And again, that ties back to accountability. And then kind of the third solution out there, this would be what you're getting from a Rogers or a Whiteman's recording, or what we did similar for some of our meetings the other year with CTRE, where we brought them in. It doesn't have that agenda integration piece, but what it lacks in that, it makes up in overall quality. That's certainly the highest video quality you're going to see. What they can provide would depend on the provider themselves. So this was one of those meetings. So you can just see the camera angles depend on how many cameras you have. You can really zoom in on speakers. You can overlay text onto the screen, so you could actually have counselor names up there. You could brand it. Sorry, Pat. Yeah. And so I think we're all kind of familiar with those ones. That, again, it has probably the highest ongoing cost to a vendor per year, but at the same time, you don't own any cameras. They take responsibility for the cameras. They have to install them. They troubleshoot any problems, and they deal with all of that, and it takes it pretty much entirely off to staff. It would just be uploading onto the web. So those are basically the options that are out there. What I'm recommending is that we do take the next step to improve what we have. I think that we can do better than this, and I think if we have something that's better to watch and easier to follow along, we're going to retain those viewers for longer. I don't expect we're going to have 10,000 people watching our videos ever, unless something is terribly wrong or right, I guess. But I think it gives us that level of accountability and transparency that people are coming to expect now. I'm suggesting that when we're working on the communications budget for next year, we include 30,000 in there. About 20 of that or so would be earmarked for improving council recordings, whether that's contracting someone, buying cameras, and licensing for one of the programs I showed you. The other 10,000 is to address ongoing audio issues that we just are having problems in this room. We were having them in the old room too, where you get the gallery saying they can't hear, so I'm hoping we can make some upgrades for that. Our audio system has served us very well, but it is getting dated, and it's just, I think, time to get a quote for a refresh on that. And I'm suggesting that we go to an RFP process. Let's put all of our deliverables that we want out there, see who checks the most of those boxes and offers the best return product for us. And I'm hoping as well to see a surplus in the communications budget this year that will offset some of those costs for the first year.
Thanks, Rob. Any questions of Rob? Yes, Councillor Eccles.
Rob, if we have these recorded, obviously we would have the, could keep them forever type of thing.
Yep.
House them. Would we need another server to house those, Jody, or? No, we won't worry about that. I guess where I'm going, how much storage do we have for paper copies now of minutes? Because it's one of the things that, from being here, you've got to keep minutes stored. And our storage space continuously, since I've been here, since 2003, it's been a topic. Where can we get storage for paper? For paper. Is there a need, or could we use under the Municipal Act, well, here's the full thing that's recorded, there's the disc, instead of having boxes and boxes and boxes stored?
The
I know
clerk would
we-
love to answer that.
I know she will.
Okay.
Pretty sure I know what her answer's going to be.
So we're required to keep paper copies of our minutes. They're historical documents, and I know that council is well aware of that. We actually go through a process where we minimize them and bind them into binders on an annual or every other year basis, as staff can get to those. And some of them are stored here. Our most current, I'll say 20 years, are stored here in one of our fireproof vaults. The rest are sent out to the archives for preservation out there, because they are historical documents for our county and the actions that council takes on a regular basis. So we haven't run into currently any issues with the storage of those minute books out in the archives. If that were the case, I would suspect that archives would be looking for some expansion, but we are required to keep those paper copies.
I recognize the being acquired to keep them and what is in that legislation, but I guess, that's been there since the Municipal Act. No matter when it's been revised, it's always been there, you shall. Well, technology's advanced considerably, and I mean, some of those that are out in the archive are handwritten, I believe. Yeah, we don't have to do that anymore, do we? No, we have changed slightly, yeah. That's, the point is, how are we going to catch up? Where do we continue? And it's not from here, it's more through,
I think,
advancing through the province to say,
Right.
can we use other documents?
I think Heather will lead that, and I'm sure the clerks of Ontario may have a comment on that.
So thank you, Mr. Warden. I see where you're coming from, Councillor Eccles. And we've actually run into this recently where we have documents on discs we can't read any longer. So the technology changes to just have our minutes recorded in a digital format. Our technology is changing so frequently that the ability to read those 5, 10, 20 years down the road may be null and void. And to have those as your only option for corporate minutes.
I would challenge you to some of those ones that were done in the 1880s to be able to read some of that writing that's there.
Look at them.
But in that same context, even with our children today, ask them to sit down and read a book. Just a book.
Thanks for that. Councillor Eccles, do you have any, what we were talking about here is video. It'd be a little off track there. Do you have any thoughts? Because I know as the Mayor of West Grey, you lead video presentations all the time.
Well, we have all kinds of video presentations, but I guess,
Council
trying to
meetings.
find ours are online. We've got a very good agreement with Whiteman Telecommunications does ours, and I believe Hanover's the same. It's great, but now you've got the whole thing recorded, and I guess, is it necessary to record if we're still going to continue on with the minute taking and whatnot? So it's an economical thing here that I'm looking towards.
Okay, so you're about saving 30,000. Okay. Any other comments from other councillors on videos? Councillor Fosbrook?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So 2 points. Recommended next steps on page 12. So what it states is staff recommend an RFP be issued outlining our specific needs for recording services. And then it goes on to say some of the deliverables to be included on the RFP are. So if this report is going to get you to issuing an RFP, then I guess I wonder, do you really want to be too specific and not allow the respondents to in fact tell you everything that they can do? So if you have a list, and I guess the last bullet point says other requirements as recommended by staff in IT and communications. Let me preface all of this by saying, I think this is wonderful. Very, very good. Enhance transparency, tell people, show them, allow them to see the discussions. So are we potentially limiting the scope of what will be offered by the respondents by the time you get to this RFP? That's one question that I'll leave as rhetorical for your consideration. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So the other point is the resolution. I'm disappointed to see that it still restricts the video recording to council and committee of the whole meetings. So, we have important, if not contentious, committee meetings that take place in this building. And I really would like to see consideration for some of those meetings taking place in these chambers with this capacity so that, if we truly want to be transparent in terms of long-term care and economic development, then let's put our money where our mouth is and allow for the video recording of those meetings as well. So that would require, I would imagine if this is going to be the go-to room, I believe that would require those meetings taking place in this room, but I don't know if you can set up this type of operation in other meeting rooms. Bottom line is, I think if you're going to say that you want to be transparent, let's be transparent about some of the most contentious issues that we face. Thank you,
Thanks for
Mr.
that
Warden.
comment. I don't know whether the CEO has a
Just that.
comment back on that.
I think we're trying to work our way through a process here. So what we're asking here is for council to be aware of our intention to put resources in the 2019 budget. When we have an approved 2019 budget and we know these resources are available, then Rob's intention is to RFP solutions. Certainly, there will be an opportunity for any of the proponents to that RFP process to, speak to what their abilities are. I think once we have that, then we'll be able to, have a further discussion about how we might be able to enhance our communication and undertake further video recording if council at the time so wished. But for right now, we're just trying to work through the process, and this is the approval that we have right now, is to have council and committee of the whole meetings recorded.
Thank you. Councillor Barfoot has a comment?
Just a brief comment. Thanks, Mr. Warden. So non-support of this would just continue on, we would continue on with exactly what we're doing today.
Correct.
I would suggest, though, that in the 2019 budget, that we're still going to have to address those audio issues, just because of the challenges that we're having at the back of the room and the accessibility implications of that as well.
But it'll be certainly far less than the 30,000.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Mackey, then Councillor Patterson.
Thanks, Warden. I guess I'm struggling a little bit with the 30,000, with the number of uptake that we've got right now. The maximum of 500 down to 20, so if you average that out, 100 people out of 90,000 are taking, and, the original video that we currently have that you showed us, Rob, it's not certainly perfect, but I was able to hear everything and get a sense if I was truly interested in viewing. So I think I'd like to see more of an uptake from, the consumers out there before I supported additional. I agree with the additional audio to make sure that everyone can hear, but I'm not sure we're at the point that we need to spend additional on the video right now. Up the road, likely, but I don't know if that's where we're at today. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Patterson, comments?
Thank you, Mr.
or
Warden.
questions?
Rob, did I hear correctly that the clips can be shared?
With one of the solutions, they can be shared, yes.
So if they're shared, is there a safeguard that they cannot be edited and changed?
There isn't, but technically, there's programs out there that you could download a YouTube video and edit that as well.
So we could be misquoted? Staff
that's
could be
correct.
misquoted? Okay.
That's only one of the solutions, I don't know. Councillor John Woodbury.
Going to one of these other solutions, how much time would that save you per meeting? Because you said you had quite a bit of work to do after with the editing and things.
Yeah, each meeting is essentially a full day and then some of time, just making sure we get everything set up, and then upload times, having to go through all of the meeting again and get the time codes to timestamp that. This would take away all of that time stamping, because that can actually be done live during the meeting in some of the programs, or with some of the services that's just done for you. So that would eliminate pretty much an entire day of time that I could be focusing on the meeting when I'm in the meeting and not transitioning slides.
Yes, yeah.
So just
Continue.
as a follow-up, that would basically in a year, would be a month of your time. So it could save considerable.
Thanks for that comment. Councillor Ardell, you have a comment?
Excuse me, thank you, Mr. Warden. We do have webcasting, and it saves people coming to council chambers. So now we see them, we get great participation. It's transparent. They know who's there, who's at county council, because we've been hearing that, who's away. And so now they know who's there and what's being said, and it has increased our webcasting. So I'm in favor of it, because I think it's transparency, and I think it's something that is moving ahead, and that's what people want. And I think we have to do we have to listen to what the people want.
Thank you for that. Councillor McQueen?
Councillor Dell makes an interesting comment there about people that can't make it. What is the next step that you can be live, so people can go on the website and see it live? Is that possible?
Yeah, that would be with any one of these services, that would be a stipulation. And that's what I'm recommending, that if we do move forward, we go with live streaming. I know we've increased our upload speeds in the building, which was a drawback before.
Oh,
But
circle's
we would
going
need
fast.
to subscribe to something to get there.
So could you bring back, before, say, to make a decision on how that happened in other municipalities where they did live, where the uptake was greater? I guess my point is, it's a cost to go there, but can you bring back something that other municipalities went live that showed? Obviously, I think live is probably more important because it's at the time. Sure, you can go back and see it's like watching, how many people watch a hockey game if it's been recorded? Or you watch it live? So my point is if people is there an uptake if it was live versus going to see what somebody said after the fact? You know what I mean? Like sometimes people want to know what's going on. You say, looking at Gail Ardell there, you're live at Blue Mountains?
Yes, we are live, but you can play it back anytime as well. So you have that option. So we have a lot of people, sorry, Mr. Ward, we do have a lot of people picking up live, but we also have them going back in. And you can still take those clips and put them on your Facebook page, and it has been done. People through this election process are doing that. But it is exactly what you are saying, so they haven't docked it, I would say, but yeah, it's.
So what Rob is suggesting is that he would investigate several different sources. Each one of the sources would be a live feed. He's not suggesting the delayed feed that we currently have. Is that a summary of maybe your approach?
Yeah, I would recommend a live streaming be in there. for
Okay,
sure.
so that's kind of, it's not a budget item, but it's a mindset of how to move forward. Okay, so are there any other questions with regard to this particular budget item? Yes, Councillor O'Leary.
Thanks, Warden. Is there a
Thanks for
history-
coming today, by the way.
Thank you. Is there a history of complaints with what we're doing now?
There actually hasn't been anyone really complaining about the quality. There's been some issues, and that was just that it didn't record right. There was problems, some user error getting to know the new programs. But there hasn't been much engagement, period, on the videos, really.
Okay, that answers that question. Okay, well, I'll call the motion. All in favor of staff proceeding with this $30,000 budget item for consideration in the next budget? Remembering this is a committee of the whole. All in favor? Recount.
5, 6, 7. Opposed?
7,
No.
4.
No. 7, 4.
7, 4.
Opposed?
Opposed?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Lost.
8.
Could I ask for a recorded vote, please?
Yes, certainly.
Counselor Pringle?
No.
Counselor Mackey?
No?
Counselor Barfoot?
No.
Counselor Burley?
No.
Counselor McQueen?
Yes.
Warden Halliday?
Yes?
Counselor Patterson?
No.
Counselor Hicks?
Nay.
Counselor Clumpus?
Yes.
Counselor Greenfield?
Yes.
Counselor O'Leary?
No.
Counselor Wright? Counselor Fosbrook?
Yes.
Counselor Woodbury?
Yes.
And Counselor Ardell?
Yes.
Counselor Eccles?
Yes.
Motion is lost, 38-40.
Okay, so there you are, Rob. You'll have to come back with some other alternate plans. Thanks. Okay, next is that report, CAO CW 2218, Corporate Strategic Plan 2017-2019 Progress Report, be received for information. Put that on the floor. Looking for Councillor Barfoot, seconder Councillor Patterson. CEO will present at the podium.
Okay, Mr. Warden, Council, I'm very pleased to be bringing forward this report today. While in no way does it capture everything that's been undertaken over the last 2 years, I've tried to give you a sense of our success in moving the strategic plan goals forward with some of the many initiatives that have been undertaken, a number of which were over and above the staff's day-to-day responsibilities. The report begins by noting some of the extensive consultation work that's been undertaken, as well as the many working groups and sector tables that our staff are contributing to. I was not sure whether or not you had ever seen really a comprehensive summary of all of that activity, and it is significant. We have a strong commitment to working collaboratively with all of our stakeholders. We share ideas and support projects with many, recognizing that we are all stronger and more effective when we work together. The report then moves to provide highlights of some of the initiatives and progress made toward each of our 3 strategic goals. With regard to growing the economy, I can't thank this council enough for the genuine support that you've provided. We've been able, in a short period of time, to grow a fully functioning economic development department that is working in tandem with planning and across all of our county departments to improve our assessment base and facilitate growth in jobs and investment in our communities. The completion of the new official plan is a significant achievement. The creation of the Regional Skills Training and Innovation Center has tremendous potential to deliver something that will be unique in the province. We take possession of Sydenham on the 24th of October, just so you know, and I'm so excited for you to visit. There'll be an update report coming forward in November, and I'm hoping that we'll get you all an opportunity to go through there as well. Planning, also on the economic development front, planning is swamped with applications. We're seeing people come forward every day with ideas to the Business Enterprise Center about things that they'd like to pursue. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the province of Ontario. I believe our job now is to keep moving forward, but to keep our eye on the ball with more data and analysis about both the strengths in our economy that we could further support, as well as any emergent weaknesses that we need to pay attention to. The second goal, healthy, connected communities. Again, this council demonstrated a commitment to community paramedicine through the early days and through some uncertainty regarding provincial support. And as staff, we're very grateful for your leadership on that front. We're leaders in the province in this regard, and our CHAPS clinics within our housing units are making a real difference to the health and well-being of our residents. Indications are that we can expect further support for enhancing the community paramedicine program in the future. Social services staff are helping more families with access to and costs of childcare. Our down payment support program and within the housing department has helped 33 families get into their own homes, and we've supported our partners to build new rental and affordable housing. We're making sure that people and goods can move efficiently. We paved 60 kilometers of roads in 2018. Our third goal, excellence in governance and service, is where we focus on continuous improvement. Through the efforts of the building committee and many committed staff, we ran a solid building project here. The architect was here yesterday, and he said that there has never been a municipal Class A office building renovation project completed for the cost per square foot that we achieved. So we did it, and I think that, you know, all of the members of the building committee and all of the staff, there were a large number of people that had a hand in that, and I think we all are to be appreciated for those efforts. We take the management of all of our assets very seriously so that we can be as prepared as possible should circumstances require us to make difficult decisions and prioritize work in the future. So we're making sure that when, you know, if our funding levels don't stay where they are, we're in a place to provide the advice and guidance that you expect from us as staff to be able to make difficult decisions. We've adopted a communication strategic plan and are working to improve access to data, information for the public in a wide variety of fronts, and those things are listed there in the report. In response to a changing security landscape, we're making changes to our IT infrastructure so we can manage it effectively with the staff complement we have, and that the public's trust in our ability to protect their information is maintained. Oh, I meant to mention on the communications piece, I think one of the things that has great potential is the Made in Gray magazine. And I wanted to let you know that the December issue of Made in Gray will be, again, put out to all of the households in Gray County. So we're working with staff from each of your member municipalities on the content of that. But it is going forward, and I think it's a great piece of work to get people interested and engaged with what's happening in the county. Next term, it will be time to revisit the strategic plan with the incoming council. Any comments or suggestions that you might have would be most welcome to inform that process. We recognize that plans are most valuable when there are defined outcomes and progress measures. So establishing service levels and a way of measuring and reporting these will be something staff and I will work towards and discuss as part of the refresh project. I'm happy to take any questions or comments that you might have now or at any time in the future.
Thank you, Kim, for that presentation. It's been a stellar year. So any comments? Questions? Councillor Fosbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I noted the reference to the key performance indicators and key metrics. What sort of measurements do we already have in place to establish how well we're doing generally? So as an example, I know that we submit financial information returns to the province. There was a period of time when the MPMP acronym, Municipal Performance, whatever it is, was a requirement, and now it's become optional. And I know that when municipalities did use that tool, it enabled them to compare their performance in certain areas to other comparable municipalities.
That's where the weakness was actually in that, because the province chose not to be prescriptive in exactly how, like what was in a particular basket of service, if you will. And so there could be sometimes some significant variability in how one person defined a road or a particular service and another one did. So you found that you weren't actually comparing apples to apples. I think what I would like to see, we continue to work to have data, good data, solid data. You need benchmarks, and then you need to have a way to continuously gather that data and assess so that you can report back. We have a particular amount of staff and a particular amount of budget. I'm not looking to create new work, so I think we have to think very carefully about what are measures that are going to really mean something to the public and to council, and have a conversation about what are those most important things. Because it isn't 100, it's probably 5 or 6 things that really matter to people in the short term, and that's what we need to do. As far as, our ongoing reporting, we report and report and report to the province on service levels in each one of our departments. Everything that's got a transfer payment associated with it has service levels associated with it. So we're reporting information back to the province. We already do capture that information. We can take a look at what those things are, and if we think that there are some of them that the public and yourselves would find useful and interesting, we can play those up and get them out there. But for the most part, I don't think they really capture sort of the essence of the service. They're very prescribed.
If I may, Mr. Warden, thank you for that. And I agree, I've heard the same, that there's challenges in using the data that's submitted to the province. So whether it's data that's submitted to the province and making that more obvious perhaps to some of the ratepayers for their own review. So work on updating the plan should include establishing service levels and key performance indicators. So this is the beginning stages of establishing how we can measure performance?
I think that we need to, with the incoming council, with the work that we'll do internally amongst our staff, to establish what our priorities are. What are the things that you want to see move forward over the next likely 2 years is a time frame that I would suggest. And then once we've established what those key priorities are underneath each one of the goals, then we need to have a talk about what can we measure and report on.
Thank you.
Okay, good questions. Kevin?
And Kim knows this, but like, the asset management regulation, it defines that we have to set levels of service that council is going to approve. So that is work that finance and the rest of the departments are working on right now, trying to build towards that policy. So there will be levels of service that this council will decide on that they'd like measured and reported on.
That's a whole new field of information. Okay, that's good to know. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Kim. So I'm going to call the vote on this, that this report received for information. All in favor? That's good. So our photographer is going to be there to take council pictures, and then we'll break for lunch and then come back.
So if you could meet at the stairs, John Purdy will be there.
Thank you.
Mr. Warden, he's doing that walk.
Yeah.
Thanks for the exercise on our behalf.
Some of these people are high maintenance when it comes to computers.
Okay. Well, we're going to reconvene and put on that report, CCR, CW 1118 be received, and that council's salary be adjusted to reflect the removal of the 1/3 taxable allowance by keeping the net salary the same as it would have been with the 1/3 taxable allowance effective January the 1st, 2019, pending approval of the 2019 budget. Put that on the floor. Councilor Burley, Councilor Ardell, open for discussion, brought forward by the clerk and Sandra Shipley. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. This report is being brought back at the request of council. Sandra and I presented a council remuneration report in June of this year, and those resolutions or recommendations did not move forward, save and except that council requested that we bring back a further report on the removal of the 1/3 taxable allowance for councilor salary as indicated in the federal legislation that begins January 1st of 2019. So we've done a little bit of more work on that. We've heard from other municipalities, and Sandra has also gotten information from her Ontario Human Resources Association and what others are doing through that association. So I'm going to let Sandra speak to the numbers, and she can walk you through all of that.
Thank you, Heather. Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you. So if you're looking at table number 1 and the salary impacts, so at the bottom of that chart, you will see some assumptions that were made, and they're the similar assumptions that were in the June report. In that, we went back to the last full completed year and looked at the 2017 treasurer statement. And we rejigged some numbers for warden and average counselor because that was a transition year in the change of warden. So the comments at the bottom speak to that. What we did is the current column, the 1/3 exempt, shows the current net pay with the 1/3 tax exemption being enforced. Under option 1 was the do nothing, meaning that shows the impact to net pay for counselors by the loss of the 1/3 exemption, as well as it shows the additional charges or costs to the county in employee payroll taxes. Option 2 shows the adjustment required, additional salary required to keep counselors at the same net pay on average. So, I mean, we got it within 21 cents, 22 cents, so we figured that was close. In speaking with my colleagues at OMRA in September when I attended there, this topic was talked about briefly, and by a show of hands, they did ask what municipalities were doing, and by far the majority were bringing their council to the same net pay on average. So by approving this, if you make the decision to approve that, by far the majority of your colleagues are doing the same thing. If you look at the next table, it shows the annual impact to that in the cost of Canada Pension, pension plan, employer health tax. These assumptions were made that every member of council pays Canada Pension, is a member of OMERS, and claims the basic tax exemption. From year to year, we don't necessarily know what tax exemption each councillor is going to be in, because that can change. And with it being an election year, we certainly don't know the makeup of our county council, save and except, I believe, one person. So we went with the assumption that everybody paid CPP, contributed to OMERS, and the basic tax exemption there. So what the report is showing you that is that the loss of the 1/3 exemption only is an increase to the county of $33,000, and the cost of the top-up is an additional $65,865.71.
Okay, is that, that's your presentation, so now you're open for questions? Okay. Everybody's had an opportunity to explore it. Any questions? Okay, let's start with Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much. Being a councillor that isn't going to be here next year, I would be happy to move that recommendation. I think it's a very fair way to go, and it's fair to all of the councillors and the warden's position as well.
It's been moved in second, but your comments are certainly appreciated. Any other comments? Councillor McQueen.
So that is showing option 2 through you, Mr. Warden, is that what you're saying? We're going option 2 is what's on the floor?
Yes, option 2 is what this report is recommending, which would be to increase the warden salary to the $13,500 and the councillor salary by the $2,500.
Okay. If I may continue, Mr. Warden? So the 0.22 is like 22% increase, is that what that means? Would that be?
Yes, 22.5%.
Right, okay. So I'm sort of happy to see that come back with, at least that sort of falls into a bit of a ballpark where that's sort of your shortfall. And I did some looking last night online and under federal and provincial tax. So provincial tax, so I guess one thing I want to make note here, Mr. Warden, is the 19,000 that is shown here is not our only income, because we do sit on lower tier. So you do either have a mayor or a deputy mayor's income. So say that is definitely, if it's 20 here, it could be 30, sometimes higher or lower at your lower tier. So say it's at least 50,000. So in a $50,000 tax bracket, and that's not including any external, whether you're on a pension or you have other income. So at the province, between 42,000 and 85,000, it's 9.15%, and federally, it's at 20.5%. That's between 45 and 91,000. You put the two together, that's 29.65% is your tax rate, is your tax ratio if you make $50,000, which probably, generally saying, just from the default of being either mayor or deputy mayor and county councilor, that's what you're at. So your 0.22 is just a little short of what, and I think it came back to what Councillor Mackey was saying, that it's the federal government that's made this. It's not anybody else's fault. It's the federal government that's changed this rules. But as Councillor Mackey said at a discussion back when the first report came is we shouldn't be going backwards. And I think that's sort of that point of us county councilors. I guess it's it's a decision of the council as a whole. But if you're, and I guess that's through remuneration review of the next term and all that kind of stuff, how that all rolls out and stuff like that. I'll leave it at that. My point is 0.22 is a little shy of the minimum of 30%, because that would be what we'd all fall in, would be 0.30 is what I feel. I'll certainly support the recommendation, but I just think it's a little short from just even from our two salaries of here and as being at the lower tier is 30%. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thanks for that input. Yes, Councillor Mackey?
Thanks, Mr. Warden. Thanks, Senator. This certainly goes pretty much to the point that we were making last time, and it pretty much identifies that there wouldn't be a loss and we wouldn't be going backwards. If memory serves me right, the last time we had the discussion, in your report, additional meetings that councillors attend was going to be all-inclusive, and I believe Councillor Wright brought up, and I think there was some agreement that that should be in addition. So has that been looked at this time around?
It hasn't. Those recommendations were not carried at that meeting. So the status quo will remain the same, and if you're coming in for a long-term care committee of management or economic development, currently you will get a per diem still. With the new term of council, they may request that we look at a fulsome remuneration review, but right now this is the only thing that we're looking at.
Thank you.
That's good clarification. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Fosberg?
Thank you. Just a very brief question. You said something that sounded like OMRA. Is that an acronym for what?
Sorry, that stands for the Ontario Municipal Human Resources Association, which the county is a member of, and they have two conferences a year, one in September, and they quite often will talk about topics such as this that are affecting every municipality.
So they were in fact a relevant resource for you in bringing this information to us?
Only to reaffirm that most of the municipalities, when asked, were either already made the recommendation and it was approved, or were recommending to go to net pay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, Councillor Hicks?
I'm looking at Table 1, Option 2, I see that the total earnings to be 77.3 for the warden and 21.6 for councillors. But when I look at the very end, the summary, it talks about the income in 2019 to be 77.3 and 22.25. How do we reconcile those numbers?
So what we are proposing is that in the case of a member of council, so not the warden, the current salary is $17,284.68. So we would be adding the $2,544 for the one-third, loss of the one-third exemption to that, which brings it to $19,828.68. And based on the current council remuneration bylaw, it speaks to how council's future COLA are calculated, and that calculation would then add another 2% to council salaries, which would then bring a council salary for 2019 to $20,225.25.
I'm still confused. How do we get to the number of 21,650 in Table 1?
They're different than what you're quoting there.
They're two different numbers, yeah.
So the report the chart you're looking at is 2017 information, because we had to look at a full year. And 2017 is the last full year we have that would include per diems and so on for the average pay of a counselor.
I see. So you're talking about a raw salary, and the Table 1 includes the full salary, including per diems.
Right, so in calculating the full net pay on average, we included per diems.
Got it.
Okay, that clears that up. Okay, any other questions of our staff? Yes, Councillor Eccles?
Did I hear you right, Sam, that you said that it was just the councillor's wage that was per COLA, not the warden's?
I'm sorry,
The councillor's wage would be adjusted for the COLA increase, 2%, but not the warden's?
the 2% would apply to the warden as well.
Okay,
as-
yeah,
Sorry.
no.
But, yeah.
Okay, I'll click all questions, call the vote. All in favor of that? That motion is carried. Thank you, ladies. Okay. Okay, the next one is the community-based capital project in the Dundalk area. Motion that's going to go on the floor is that SSR CW 1418 regarding the early on community-based capital project proposed within the Dundalk Arena be received for information, and that staff be directed to develop an agreement with the Township of Southgate to facilitate the funding of a renovation and retrofit capital project that will create a community-based early on child and family center project within the Dundalk Arena. Put that on the floor. Councillor Greenfield, seconder. Councillor Mackey. Barbara, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. County Council. So I'm here before you today to provide just some information and some background on a project, and as it's known as the Community-Based Capital Project. We have a couple of them. Today we're talking about the Dundalk Arena project. We had received notification back in almost a year ago now that there were some funds through Ministry of Education that would be available for us to look at both programs within schools for early learning as well as in community-based centers. So we did apply. You'll note throughout the report that we talk about the engagement that we had with our operators, and we applied for both projects, capital funding for centers in schools and in community. We were very fortunate to be provided some funding for this project. It's an early on center that currently exists in the Old Town Hall, and the space is limited. There are, it's a growing population, as we know, and we were able to build a case with the Ministry of Education. So we received an allocation of $262,000, $500 for capital funds, plus an additional $40,000 for unique site costs. And we've been working with staff at Southgate to discuss the challenges that we have in the current space, what we need in the new space at the arena, and what else might be needed there, including renovation for that would enable accessibility features. And we recognize that staff at Southgate have already submitted an application for enabling Ontarians, hoping to get some funds for an elevator, recognizing we do need to comply when you renovate a building with the requirements to make the space accessible by 2025. That time is coming quickly. And so we're at the point now, what we want to do is move forward with discussing the agreement between the township and between the municipality and the county. We're looking at determining what the technical needs are, and would be eventually moving out to look at tendering, and that would be, I believe, with the municipality. We're still discussing that. What I'm looking for today is approval to move ahead to develop the agreement.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions to Barbara with regard to this project? Yes, Councillor Fosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thank you, Barbara. So when you describe potential risk, it sounds like the only risk is if we don't do what we need to do fast enough.
We believe so. We have been in constant contact, and when I say that, I mean almost daily, asking the ministry, are the dollars we were allocated prior to the transition, are we still getting them? We're hearing loudly and clearly that there are other programs that have not been, they're not receiving the full allocation that they were to receive, or some not at all. This is confirmed. We've received 66%, I believe, of the funds at this point, And that's to allow us to move forward with some of the preliminary work and the technical pieces. And that risk is only if we don't meet the requirement for March 1st. Moving forward, though, we're prepared to act as quickly as possible so that that isn't a risk. We just need you to know that that's what the challenge could be.
Thank you for that. And so one additional, I read the report. I didn't see what the numbers, the increase in numbers are gonna, is it just changing venue, same numbers?
There will be more space. There's definitely more availability for more kids and more program days. The challenge for us is going to be, it's not a challenge, it's great. It's a great opportunity to work with other organizations that also want to use the same space. So when the space is renovated, recognizing it's owned by Southgate, we want to collaborate with all the partners to figure out how to best meet those needs. So it's about expanding the number of days, expanding the hours, but looking at who the partners are and who else is funding the project, of course.
So if you had to say, we're going to increase this number of spaces.
It would hold more families. It's larger space.
Okay.
And it'll have kitchen facilities.
So the rest of it is, it depends.
That's right.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Yes.
sounds good, like a good project? Okay, everybody on board. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll call the vote on that. All in favor? Thank you for that. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
On to the next. Next one is that report PDRCW 34-18 be received, that the county submitted an appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal on the Township of Georgian Bluff zoning bylaw 2018-084 with respect to 20-hectare minimum lot area provision in Table 7.2 of the bylaw, and that staff be directed to work with the township to resolve this matter with the goal of avoiding a hearing on the matter. I'll put that on the floor. Councillor Barfoot, Councillor Burley, Randy.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. First off, I just want to congratulate the township in getting to this point with their zoning bylaw. Putting together a document, a zoning bylaw, is a lot of work, and township council, their staff, their consultant have done an excellent job in terms of engaging agencies and the public throughout the process, and I just want to congratulate them on getting to this point. So county staff have had a chance to review the past zoning bylaw, and there's one outstanding matter that was easily missed, and when making any final revisions to the zoning bylaw, as we've talked about with even our official plan, I'm sure there's stuff that we've missed, and those are often addressed through a housekeeping amendment after the fact. We think that as a result of this one particular matter, it has to deal with the minimum lot area in the agricultural zone. The past bylaw allows a minimum lot area of 20 hectares and possibly as small as 0.8 hectares in the ag zone. Under the current county official plan, the minimum lot size for the creation of new lots in the agriculture designation is 40 hectares. So based on this causes a conformity issue with the county official plan because if someone proposed a lot in the agricultural zone that is less than 40 hectares, it would meet the provisions of the zoning bylaw and would not trigger a county official plan amendment because what happens is that the zoning bylaw is deemed to conform to the county official plan based on a section of the Planning Act. This would mean that Georgian Bluffs would need to approve the consent that is less than 40 hectares, even though it would not conform to the county official plan. We've discussed this matter with township staff and their consultant, and we understand that the reason that they wanted to identify the minimum lot areas less than 40 hectares was to avoid existing lots becoming legal non-conforming lots. We totally understand that concern, and what we have seen in other zoning bylaws is that instead of identifying the minimum lot area that is less than what is permitted in the county official plan, it's best to include what is called non-complying lot provisions in the zoning bylaw to recognize those existing lots that were created prior to the passing of the zoning bylaw. Through our discussions with the township staff and consultant, we have a path forward to resolve this in a timely and efficient manner. What we are looking at using is actually new provisions under the Planning Act. So some of the changes that were made recently to the Planning Act include what's called alternative dispute resolution techniques. This will be the first time that we've utilized these. I think it's the first time the township as well. What this does is it buys more time for the township and the county to resolve this matter outside of a local planning appeal tribunal process, which will save everyone time and money. Normally, once you receive an appeal, you have 15 days to send in your package to the local planning appeal tribunal. By exercising the alternative dispute resolution techniques, it gives you 75 days to resolve that. And you don't even have to send in the LPAT if the matter gets resolved within that 75-day period. So we're actually excited to be able to utilize this new technique. And we look forward to working with the township to resolve this in a timely and efficient manner so that the remainder of the zoning can come into effect. So what we're recommending is to continue to proceed with the appeal. We had to put a placeholder appeal because the last day of appeal was yesterday. Earliest we could meet was today. So we've appealed the zoning bylaw, but like I said, we have a path forward, and we're looking forward to working with the township to resolve it.
Thanks, Randy. That sounds like good cooperation. Anything from other, yes, Councillor Barfoot, you may.
Thanks, Mr. Ward. And Randy, you've certainly summed it up right. If I can offer any word of advice to other municipalities, keep your zoning bylaws updated. Unfortunately, we had hired a firm to do this a number of years ago, and it wasn't completed, so we had to start the process all over again. So the longer you leave it, the more information that compiles, and it takes so much more to get it. So it's been a tremendous undertaking to do this. So we can see the finish line, and I think, as Randy has pointed out, we're almost there. We had another little snag come up yesterday with the Conservation Authority, but we can get over that hurdle as well. So, as I say, I want to thank the county staff for catching that and moving this forward. So, yeah, we're just about there.
Excellent.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks, Al. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor? Motion? The motion is carried. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, the next is a verbal update from our Director of Transportation, Patrick Hoy, and he's going to give us a verbal update on the Grey County Quarry.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Warden. First, my apologies for a verbal update. I think probably the county and yourselves, we're kind of owed a written report probably in about February. So it's been a fairly painful process with the consultant. I'm going to go a little bit through the timeline and some of the struggles we've had and what has kind of been accomplished to date. But I think it's important that this council dealt with so many of the issues. The term is nearing its end, and it was important to us to get something before you so you can, be kept in the loop. Just a little review of the timeline. So we released an RFP in September 2017, awarded it to Altus in September 2017 for completion in January 2018. So the consultant had actually, or what seemed to be a fairly good start to the process. Within a month, they were up reviewing the files, copying some of our reams and boxes full of old data on the quarry. They did a site visit. We gave them a tour. They met with the planning consultant here in town, their sub, and they seemed to be off to a quick start. Once they kind of got into the depths of the quarry file, I think they struggled with really the cost-benefit analysis. They've had a hard time because quarry operators are so elusive about what they pay for quarries and what they're really worth and their business models. I think they've really been kind of wringing their hands over trying to get that completed. So we got on them a little bit, and there were some things they found about the quarry, some of our old permits and kind of the shape they were in, and just so much history there that, and a quarry that hadn't really been operating since 2011. So there was some pretty legitimate timeline delays there, not to the extent that it's still going. But so in March 2018, we really started getting on the consultant that we have to get this quarry decided one way or the other. We expect a recommendation. We want a cost-benefit analysis. The council deserves a recommendation. So they sent us a draft report on June 21st. We reviewed that with planning, finance, engineering, and maintenance. And it comes down, they made 6 options. We had originally indicated 5 in our RFP, so they added another option of just walking away from the license, which, you know, you're not going to do. So they didn't put a lot of time in that, obviously, but so it kind of came down to their summary that indicated that leasing the quarry to a private operator and receiving royalties may be the longest or biggest return on investment long term. Short term, selling it would show the most immediate returns. Well, that's about the limit of their detail, which we weren't happy with because we kind of knew that, right? So we went back to them just at the first week of August after we got all our summary, and there's a couple other little summary. They didn't really have there's a couple other things in the report that we wanted to see, but that was really the crux of our issue. So since then, since August, we've been talking to the consultant, wondering when the project is coming. Another thing that happened, the property next door was for sale and got sold and purchased by another operator. And so that kind of, you know, muddied the waters for a little bit. They maybe got distracted by that for a while because, you know, one of the options was expand the quarry, buy properties around it. Well, all of a sudden that really wasn't something you're going to necessarily do anymore, or it'd be harder than, you know, they were projecting. So there was a bit of a delay there, and our consultant that was working on this the entire way through the project manager has left Altus. So now we're dealing with another person at Altus who's kind of dealing with the guy who's left. He's out of the country, but anyway, it's a bit of a mess, sort of. Now, our consultant tells us that we should expect something next week. So we're going to turn around a report as quick as we can to get this draft report before you. Not too much positive news, really, other than at least they've got it narrowed down to 2 options. But that's kind of the latest where we're at.
Okay, thanks for that information. Any questions of Patrick at this time? Yes, Councillor McQueen.
So, thank you very much for that, Patrick. And so you said the property to the east was for sale and sold, but you made a comment that you thought it was sold to another aggregate operator or owner?
I'm not sure how much public information is out there on that, on who bought it or.
Okay, what can you?
I'm not sure if I can or not. I'd prefer not to.
Well, okay, so certainly it was up for sale, I think, 5 years ago, that there was options with that property at the time. Maybe be careful how I say that, but obviously if there's rock in one spot, there's probably rock in another spot. And I just thought it was interesting, if that was the case, hypothetically saying, with regards to an aggregate speculator next door, because there's no license there, right? Could that be a better option for us if we were to sell it?
Through you, Mr. Warden, just to be clear, the one thing the consultant did say, when it went for sale, we had contacted them right away. They compared it to prices in the area. It wasn't marketed for sale as any sort of aggregate. It's not zoned for that.
No, it's just a farm.
They felt that what it was being sold for was fairly consistent with the properties in that area. So obviously and it was originally owned by kind of an investment firm in the States anyway, I believe, so.
So what I was saying is, on a speculating perspective, if a person was thinking of putting an aggregate operation next door, or if an individual it was that certain person, would you suggest, or would you agree that that would make our property much more valuable? Maybe I can't.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, is it worth exploring? That's all. Is it worth exploring the new owner of the property to the east? That's all. I guess that's where I'm coming from.
And I would think that would, through you, Mr. Warden, that would go into the recommendations from the report.
Okay.
So, so if you decide not to just outright sell, are you going to try to negotiate something with another party? That's kind of on the table now where it maybe wasn't before.
So here's where I'm coming from. If the individual next door was thinking that, it certainly would make more sense to buy our operation and then expand to the east, easier than it would be to start new, because you got setbacks, you got all that kind of stuff. I'm just throwing it out there in a sense of of value to us. Probably by the time that we looked at that, probably that farm's probably doubled from the time it was for sale the time before. And unfortunately, that's what happens with real estate, right? So anyway, I'll wait till your report then from there.
Thanks for that question. Councillor Barfoot, you have a
I
comment?
was just going to make a comment that I think one of the options that goes out of the equation now then is us looking at purchasing next door, because that property is sold and that new owner is in the business. So I look forward to the report, but I think it narrows our scope now, moving forward than what it was, let's say, potentially back in August, because I was looking forward to the discussion coming forward and, whether we decided to look at, purchasing next door or whatever, but, that's not on the table anymore. So I think we really have scoped it down now. And so, as I say, in all fairness, I hope we get to deal with it, because we have the history on this. If we turn this whole file over to a new council, it's going to take them a while to get up to speed on. So I hope we can have some direction we can give forward anyway.
I think Patrick's headed in that direction.
Yeah, well, as Mayor Barfoot said, like, one of the options was expanding the capacity. So that was either buying the property next door or going below the water table. So as Al said, now, obviously, or you would think, unless you want to get into some negotiation, buying the one next door is off the table.
Yeah.
Going below the water table is a lot bigger road to expand the capacity. You're getting into environmental studies. Now, that stuff is they've been working on that in the report, getting facts and figures in that. So one thing I just kind of want to go over a little bit. What they're working on now with the cost benefit is basically a matrix to say, if you keep producing 50,000 a year, maybe you should go with this. If you're producing 20,000 tons a year, you should maybe go with that. So they're just trying to kind of give us some options on where we think we're going to be as far as aggregate demand as the county, and then try to narrow in on what the solution is that way. So that's kind of where they're at.
Are they giving you ratios that if you lease it, how you would lease it, just on so much a ton or something like? Are there parameters for that?
That's what we've asked for, because, some of the stuff that's in here, it kind of says, depending on what you get for your aggregates or how much there is, it could be worth doing royalties. Like it really is kind of vague like that. So now we've asked them to really narrow in and use your expertise, because they came very qualified to do this study. So we really just want that nitty-gritty detail. So that's what they're working on.
Okay, so would it be the first meeting or the second meeting in November you want to bring this back?
I'll see what we get next week.
Okay.
Hopefully, it won't take us too long to turn around and bring a report to council. It's basically just showing what their findings are, right?
So, in other words, there will be an opportunity for this council to review it then? That's what you're saying? Okay. Councillor Fosbrook, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So to Councillor Barfoot's point about, keeping up with all this information, we have, and I'm probably going to misquote it, an aggregate master plan. What's it called? It's a big document.
Yes, it's called an aggregate inventory master plan. It was done in 2004. It focuses only on sand and gravel deposits, and this is a bedrock resource in this area.
So there's no relevance to that report to this? Okay. Okay, well, thank you for that. So is there as an example, if we were looking at a planning proposal for consideration, you'd go to a link and here's related reports. Is there any place that you can go to look for reports that speak to this issue? So if anybody does want to get up to speed, stay up to speed?
No, there isn't currently.
No. Okay, so we'll wait for that next one then. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McQueen?
Because this is brought to us today, we don't really have a good opportunity to think about asking you questions. But I guess the thing is I would certainly suggest that, from my perspective, is you find out how much the property did sell to the east, if you can do that. I think if you're coming back with options, if one of those options is to sell, I think we need to do that in camera, because you've got to keep that to yourself to know what that number is in camera. And I guess the license is current, like we keep up to our annual report and all that kind of stuff, so I think you did say that. So certainly a license is worth something in itself over above, so look forward to the report.
Okay, I think we've had a good discussion on that. Thank you, Patrick. We don't need a motion, just recognize that you did present a report. Okay, thank you. The next item is item G, which is an e-blast to be pulled by council member from the Fletcher in Advance. And the motion on the floor is that the Fletcher in Advance article regarding the Fletcher and all candidates meeting be received for information. Put that on the floor. Councilor Ardell, seconder. Councilor Barfoot. Discussion? Councilor Barfoot.
Well, Mr. Warden, I think as was witnessed today, we've got 18 people around this horseshoe, and we don't always agree on every item that comes forward. Everyone has their say, and the democratic process takes place, and we move on from one issue to the other, and I think we all, and in my opinion anyway, we all respect one another's positions on things. I guess I'm asking you, Mr. Warden, if you are prepared to elaborate more on your comment that was put in the paper regarding your fellow county councilors.
Well, I think that's,
Point of order.
yes?
I'm unclear as to how the procedural bylaw even allows this to be here. If I could ask the clerk to clarify where in the procedural bylaw it states that all somebody had to do was request that this material, which I believe is highly political, be on the agenda. If I could ask for the clerk's indulgence, please.
Clerk will answer, if she can.
Certainly. Councillor Fosberg is correct. It's not in the procedural bylaw. It was in a report that former clerk Sharon Vokes brought to committee with regards to changes to committee of the whole. And on that, it talks about the bi-weekly, weekly information e-blast, and one of the bullet points says that members of council may request that an item on the information email be brought forward to committee of the whole by making a request to the clerk's department. We have a current policy on, the handling of information and resolutions that was going to be updated with that information, and we have since decided to make a more fulsome information flow process, dealing with a number of pieces of information. But, so it is not in the procedural bylaw, but it was in a report that was presented at the November 8th, 2016 County or Corporate Services Committee, endorsed by County Council, with that wording in there.
Thank you very much. I'm not in favor of how this got on the agenda, and I don't think I'm going to be in favor of why it's on the agenda, but I'll reserve further comment. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wright?
Thank you very much, and I will refer to a few things. First of all, under duties of the warden in our procedural bylaw, the responsibilities of the warden under 14J to represent and support council, declaring the will and implicitly obeying the decisions in all things. That's in our procedural bylaw. If this wouldn't have been on the agenda, I would have raised this issue under other business. And my other businesses would be raised because of this reason. I read the paper, and quite frankly, I was quite shocked. The duties of the warden are to represent all of the municipalities, and to represent the municipalities in such a way that we can respect our warden. And the warden's position is quite a high position in the County of Grey, and it's one that should be respected by all of us. And as far as I know, it is a respected position. But to have a warden debase one of its municipalities is certainly not the good way for the warden to go. And I'm prepared to ask for the warden to resign unless he apologizes to the city of Owen Sound. I just feel it really upset me to do this over the weighted vote. Not one time in 4 years have any of us from Owen Sound called for a weighted vote. And not one time in the past 4 years prior to this has any one of the members of Owen Sound called for a weighted vote. I've checked into that. We have not ever called for a weighted vote. In fact, we would probably support a single vote for a single municipality if it comes back to the new council. And when I look back, even this morning's vote, we called for a recorded vote on a vote that had been defeated 9-7, and yet we called for a recorded vote. Why? Is this just to show up another municipalities that has more votes than somebody else? A vote is a vote, a defeat is a defeat, and that's the end of it. You don't go on and on about Owen Sound having more power because it has more votes. We have never, I will repeat, ever asked for a recorded vote. It just, you know, it's just, I don't know. It just, I've been on county council, I think, for 14 years, I'm not quite sure. And I've never seen this before, and I've never, ever had a warden go after a municipality like this. So Warden, I don't know if you're prepared to apologize to us, you know, in Sound, or whether you're prepared to resign, and then you can say whatever you want about any of the municipalities. Although I sit beside Anna here, and I know that Anna sometimes frustrates us because she asks a lot of questions. I have never, ever heard Anna say one word against any other councillor or any other municipality, and I give her full credit for that. So as I say, this has deeply disturbed me, and I would like an answer from the warden.
Well, you have to assume that all the words that are written there are accurate. They aren't. There's a lot of misquotes in that particular article, and they are extracts, and I personally guarantee you that I made no comments about weighted votes. So that being said, I don't feel it's necessary for me to apologize for something I didn't say. So the reporter was in the midst of a all candidates meeting. I was speaking as a candidate, running for re-election, which I'm entitled to do, but I did not comment, quite frankly, on that particular area. It's certainly misquoted, and I did not discuss that. I give you my basic trust that I didn't say that. So please, I don't believe in public hangings, and seems to be what it's going. If you want to go in camera, that's another issue. But I will not apologize for something I didn't say.
So, well, I don't know how the rest of the council feels.
Well, I don't know, but it didn't say it, okay, with regard to Owen Sound. So thank you very much for your comments. They are not true. Well, you don't believe it. Well, that's your point of view. I can prove that it didn't happen. So anyhow, Councillor Fosbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I recall quite vividly the last discussion that this council had about the procedural bylaw update. I personally took exception with a clause that said that we couldn't criticize, but to revisit a question. That was acknowledged as an infringement on our freedom of speech. It was appropriately removed, and I'm grateful for that. My position is that I think that we all have opinions. I was not at this meeting. I'm not going to say what happened, what didn't happen. I believe that my role is to, demonstrate support in as much as I'm not going to oppose a decision of council. But I don't think that precludes me from sharing my view on any matter at any time in any venue. And if it does, then we have a bigger problem. That's my view. So I'm not going to get into who said what. If people want evidence, I'm not going there. I think that what people say, they are entitled to say. And if somebody is going to hold us to account, let it be the people that put us here. Thank you.
The warden's position is different.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Councillor Barfoot.
Mr. Warden, just with all due respect, you answered the second part of the question. Can you answer the first part? Did you make the comment then that you were totally disgusted with Grey County Council?
Not exactly sure of those words, but it was a question that came from the audience asking whether or not, what are the next steps on long-term care and whether or not I would support saving Grey Gables. It was a question on saving Grey Gables, all right? I did say that I like 6 other councillors, that I walked out. And you weren't at that meeting, but I did walk out, and I walked out in disgust of the decision at the time. It wasn't that I was disgusted with county council, I was disgusted with the decision. And it was, and the word is was, and that's it. So, any other questions? Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor of receiving this for information? Motion. Opposed? I'm not sure. Madam Clerk, you want to do a count, or is it?
Call it again. All in favor?
All in favor?
8 and opposed?
Opposed?
2, 3, 4, 5, carried.
Motion's carried. Thank you for the information, and Councillor Wright, on your balcony someday, I'll show you that I didn't say that. Thank you. Moving on. That the Committee of the Whole does now go into closed session pursuant to section, what, sorry?
Do we want to do the item that was pulled from the
Oh.
consent agenda first? Oh, okay. That's fine. We can go into
So we do
then.
close now?
That's fine.
Okay, that the Committee of the Whole does now go into closed session pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001 to discuss the security of the property of the municipality or local board with regarding infrastructure. Okay, so who's staying and who's going?
I'm getting a better understanding of the specifics of certain terminology. And so I guess my question when I looked at this document was that on the third page, it states the Historic Saugeen Métis have no objection or opposition to the application. And then when I take a look at what I would describe as quite a laundry list of concerns from the public, my question is there in fact a significant weight put on the words "I object," as opposed to, well, I'm concerned about this and I really want to know how you're going to deal with that? If somebody says "I object" or fails to say "I object," is that treated any differently per planning legislation? Through you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you.
No, I guess my initial response would be no. So if someone has objections or concerns, we treat those the same. At the end of the day, if they strongly object to any future decision, then there's an appeal process or appeal mechanism that they can choose to exercise. But when someone says they object or their concerns, we treat them the same. And we treat all comments the same, whether they're from an agency, municipality, or the public. So we review all comments and then we make a final recommendation to Committee of the Whole, which will be done in this case at some point in time. Just to update Committee of the Whole in terms of this process, I know there's a number of questions that were raised with respect to traffic concerns. So there was a traffic study that was prepared for this application. Between the municipality and the county, we're having that traffic study peer reviewed. Once we have the peer review, we're going to share that with all the municipalities. So between Municipality Meaford, Town of the Mountains, and Grey Highlands, and we'll set up a meeting with the transportation folks from those 3 municipalities and ourselves, because we have county infrastructure also involved in this, and go over the results of the peer review and share the peer review results. We'll also post the peer review on our website so that everybody can see the results of that as well. So I just want to update council with respect to that too, because I know there was a number of concerns that have been raised with respect to traffic and transportation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, call the motion. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you for that. Next item of business is other business. Any other business? Yes, Councilor Barfoot.
Thanks, Mr. Ward. I should know the answer to this. I just wanted to confirm. So on our official plan, So are we, after today then, are we ready to send that to the province?
Through you, Mr. Warden, so based on the council's direction today, what we'll be doing is amending the official plan document to insert the wording
Yeah.
with respect to the increase in lot density. We'll bring back a bylaw to formally adopt, so that'll be at the next council meeting on October 25th. Hopefully, is that council will formally adopt the official plan as revised, and then we'll be sending that on to the province following that. So we have 15 days, should council pass that, adopt the bylaw on the 25th, we have 15 days to send the package to the board for them to now consider approval.
So is there still an appeal time then on our bylaw?
Through you, Mr. Warden, based on changes to the Planning Act, there's actually no opportunity to appeal the official plan. So once the province makes a decision on the new official plan, their decision's final and there's no appeal opportunity to appeal their decision.
The good news is when we set up the timetable for this, we knew we were going to be tight. We were tighter than we thought we were going to be. So we are right down to the wire. So as you say, barring it being passed at our next council meeting, it will go forward then. Perfect.
But we did put in place the opportunity to do housekeeping bylaws, so we're not restricted that we can't touch it for 2 years. Randy did put that into place, so that's a rather important addition that's just came out of use of it. So I think that is something that Randy is feeling more comfortable with. Okay, any other business?